Hi everybody, as she just said, I'm Kelcie. Today I'm going to be talking to you about some work that I did while I was in high school. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Ever since I was a young kid, I've always been extremely passionate about the sciences. Because I'm pretty stubborn, my first word was no. But shortly after that, I started asking the question, why? And these whys never really stopped for me. So my first exposure to a real science fair was when my older brother, who's 5 years older, did his 9th grade project. Now, at the time, I was only in the 4th grade, but I became enthralled with his project, and I wanted to have everything to do with it. Now, if you ask him, he'll probably tell you otherwise, but if you talk to my parents, they'll let you know that I actually ended up doing most of his project, which he should thank me for because he ended up getting 100%. But after my first little taste of science fair, I couldn't wait until I was old enough to do it myself. I fell in love with science because it offered me a place to answer my whys, to discover the answers for myself. So my first big why came back when I was 15 years old. So dandelions are something we see pretty much every day during the summer months. And I think we see them to a point where most of us kind of just disregard them or start to think of them as a nuisance. But it was this particular dandelion that was growing through the asphalt in the pavement in the alley behind my house. And I saw this dandelion, and it made me question why. Why do dandelions grow basically everywhere? How can they do this? And why, in particular, can this dandelion grow through the asphalt, which I knew was hydrocarbon-based? So I took to the internet and I started doing some research, and I found out that dandelions are actually able to accumulate a fungi into their roots. The fungi and the plant form a symbiotic relationship, and this is what allows them to grow virtually anywhere. And this is pretty cool in itself, but I wanted to see how we could apply that to something that's useful for us. This is a shot of the Alberta Oil Sands, which most of you are probably at least vaguely familiar with. And it was something growing up in Alberta I'd always heard about, mostly from the media, or you hear about it in school and things like that. But I wanted to know more about it, so I started doing more research. It turns out that the Alberta Oil Sands are the 3rd largest known oil reserves in the world. 99% of the oil that Alberta produces comes from the oil sands. This creates billions in revenue for not only our province, but for our country, and provides countless jobs for Albertans and Canadians. So I thought they were pretty important, but most of the things I was hearing about them tended to be negative. One of the biggest environmental concerns that is associated with the oil sands is the tailing ponds. Currently, the tailing ponds cover an area of 77 square kilometers up in northern Alberta. And they're kind of having a tricky time treating them and dealing with them. So I wanted to see if I could do something about that. So I started emailing oil companies up north, different researchers, things like that, pitching them my proposal, telling them what I wanted to do. And in order to do the work I wanted to do, first I had to get my hands on some tailings material. So the first time I did my project, they sent me just a few liters of tailings material, but that was all I needed to get a start. What I did, knowing that dandelions wouldn't be a viable option for remediation, simply because I don't think farmers would be okay with having fields and fields of dandelions right beside their crops. That's probably not a good thing. So what I did was I extracted the fungi that the dandelions are accumulating from the dandelion root, and I inoculated it into soybean plants. I then grew the soybean plants in the tailings material as a method of phytoremediation. And it was very successful. As you can see, when the fungi was added to the soybean plants, not only were they able to grow in the tailings material, which the other plants struggled with, there was actually an elimination of the residual hydrocarbons. And that's a big step. It was over just a period of 40 days. So this was all pretty cool, but as most of you probably know from living in Alberta, it can get just a little bit cold up here, and plants can't really grow in the winter. So I thought, what I did was good, but I thought I could do better. So knowing that the fungi was the key to the remediation success, I wanted to develop a method using just the fungi. And what I came across was using mycelium. Now, mycelium is the vegetative part of a fungi. What we would think of a fungi is usually the mushroom. Now, the mushroom's just the fruiting body. So most of the mycelium, the growth takes place underground. So this time, with some results behind me from my previous project, I again contacted the oil companies up in northern Alberta. And Alberta Innovates was able to put me in touch with Syncrude, who this time was able to send me gallons and gallons of this tailings material for my projects. But since I was in Calgary, and all of the research was taking place up in Edmonton, my parents had to help me build a lab in my basement. If you ever want to get back at siblings, build a lab where you're going to be studying tailings and hydrocarbons in your basement next to their bedroom. They'll love it. It's great. So what I did is I put the mycelium into a straw substrate. So that's based on the work I've been doing and reading some papers and things like that, is that what mushrooms normally do in nature is they release enzymes. And these enzymes are then used to break down different organic matter in the ecosystem, like woods and things like that. So what I believe is happening is that these mushrooms are releasing the enzymes, which are then breaking down the hydrocarbons and transforming them into smaller components, which the mushrooms can then absorb and utilize for their growth. So that was kind of a big step, because rather than just accumulating the hydrocarbons into the mushrooms, where you'd have to deal with that later, it may actually be transforming it. Another big success of the project was the discovery of a biofilm. Now, a biofilm is basically like a clustering, a community of bacteria. And normally in the tailings water, this bacteria isn't growing. It's kind of stunted, whether it be just from the different toxins and things in the material or whatnot. But the remediation was taking place to a level where these bacterial communities were reforming on their own. And I had a lot of bacterial growth. And that sounds kind of gross, but it's a really good thing, because once the bacteria community is reestablished, they can also be doing remediation at a bioremediation level, perhaps remediating different toxins and components of the material. Another big research goal in the oil sands is consolidation. Now, most of the methods they're using right now involve using either mechanical or chemical means, which is great, but the way that I did it was completely natural. The mushrooms were not only remediating, but they were also consolidating in the process. The mycelium was branching throughout the material and almost bracing it, consolidating it while it was remediating. Now, I was able to develop an economic, a completely natural, a time-effective, and a viable solution to one of the largest environmental problems associated with the Alberta oil sands industry. And I did this all while I was in high school. To me, I believe that science, more than any other field, more than anything else, truly offers limitless possibilities. There's so many things left to be invented, to be understood, to be discovered. And science, it doesn't have boundaries. It doesn't matter if you're in high school or you don't have a university degree. It doesn't matter how old you are. The work that I was doing, there was researchers, in some cases twice my age, working on similar things, who definitely have university degrees. It really doesn't matter. As long as you're able to look at things in a different and unique way from other people, and you're willing to pursue your crazy ideas and make sure that you follow through with them, and you're passionate to make sure that they turn out and they work, then you can do it too. Albert Einstein once said that imagination is more important than knowledge. And I truly believe that that is fact, because without imagination, there's no way we're going to create new knowledge and new understanding. So, yeah. Thank you.